Hello and welcome back to the Huddlecast, where we answer questions about faith issues, questions about the Bible. And so today we have an interesting question. Who was Cain's wife? Now, Matt, why don't you tell us who Cain is in the Bible?
Well, he was one of the children of Adam and Eve, and it was a very violent time because he killed 25% of the population at the moment. So,
as far as we know.
As far as we know.
Yeah. We don't really know.
Exactly.
So he killed his brother basically over jealousy because God said that Abel's gift was better than Cain's gift. His offering. Abel gave a better offering of his best, where Cain just gave some excess. And so God said, giving your best is a better offering than giving just your excess. And so Cain got really mad at Abel and killed him. That was kind of the thing. His brother, he killed him. So that is the kind of the issue. And then you've got Adam and Eve and Cain, and then Cain actually gets married and has family and offspring. And so the question a lot of people want to know is, like, if it was just Adam and Eve and Cain, who was Cain's wife? Thoughts?
So I can tell you because at this point it's theories, really.
It's all theories. Yeah.
So it's important to say that we're
based on biblical understanding. Yeah.
Right. So because they were able to eat from the tree of life up until the point where they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we have no idea how long they were actually in the garden, because they could have been in there for however long. Yep. It could have been an extended period of time. Because of that, we have no idea how many kids they had. One of my favorite theories says this: whenever Eve is told after she has sinned that now bringing forth a child in childbirth is going to cause pain, if she had never had children up to that point, then why is that a punishment? How would she have known what the difference was? How would she have had any idea
That's an interesting theory,
that there would have been a difference between pain in childbirth versus no pain in childbirth? So because that exists back whenever they first sinned, that raises the question of how that played out and what happened from there.
Right. So give you some context. It says in Genesis 4, 1 through 2, and Adam knew Eve his wife, and she was conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep and and Cain a worker of the ground. And we know Cain goes on to kill Abel. And then in Genesis 4:17, it says, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. When he built a city, he called the city after the name of his son Enoch. So we know there's Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and then Cain basically marries a woman. He has a wife. And then later in Genesis 5:14 or 5:4, it says the days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. So what we know is we had Cain and Abel, and then we had Seth. Seth is the line of which the faithfulness of the followers of the Lord comes from, because Abel's gone and Cain, is the bad line. So when it comes down to it, most scholars believe that Cain's wife is a relative, a sister, right, of some degree. And we know what that means. We know that means Cain married his wife. That in our modern world is incest. But we have to also understand this is the creation of the world. Yeah. God has to populate people. There's 2 people on the planet. And so there's only one way to populate the people with that, is that there's going to be children and offspring, and those children are going to have children. And eventually, in Exodus, some hundreds of years later, maybe 1,000 years later, there goes to be the 10 Commandments, or we see in Exodus 20, I think it's Exodus 20:13, there becomes a law about murder. There's also in Leviticus, around the same time, we get the law that forbids marrying sisters. Now, this is many, many generations after Cain and Abel. So the ban of marrying your sister doesn't actually come until Leviticus 18:18. And so people will try to trip Christians up and say, well, Cain may have married his sister, and then that the Bible forbids that. But that forbidding didn't come till later, till after the earth was already populated in a way which then we move forward. And so that kind of ban comes from the time of Moses and the Levites. And so that's kind of the framework. So to me, although our earth now, it's weird, it's been a regular thing of occurrence over history that most emperors and kings would marry someone who was related to them, a sister or a very, very close relative, because they would keep it in the bloodline, the monarchy. So we've seen that replicated throughout history in different ways, especially with royal lineages and things. So when we come to it, what do you guys think about that? What do you think, Ryan? Did you hear that?
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, what do I think about it? I mean, it's, I don't know. People had babies with their brothers and sisters had babies before, and then now it's not allowed anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just my simple mind, but
yeah. A lot of the reason why it's disallowed is because the close genetic connection, relation, it makes genetic mutations which create disease and issues. And so I tend to think, my theory is that Adam and Eve would have had perfect DNA. And so when there started to be the breeding of their children, that begins to create problems with perfect DNA being some of the DNA from each begin to start mutating. And over time, those mutations will become more common. And that's why you need to be farther and further away from each bloodline. That's my way that I comprehend why it was way God used that to populate the globe, and then disallowed it when that became problematic for child rearing, because then you would have all these medical problems that they wouldn't be able to care for in the ancient world, and still yet difficult to care for in today's world. So,
well, it also brings up the question too of, you can look at Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, but you also need to go just after Noah, because their kids would have likely been cousins, right, and they would have also been pairing off with one another in order to repopulate the earth as well.
Right.
So that's another example of where that comes into play, even back in those days, was trying to figure out how that would play out genetically.
Genesis 9:18-19. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. So it wasn't just Cain and his wife, which may have been a sister. It's also, there was a limited number of people in the ark, 8 people, and those 8 people from which dispersed the entire globe. So there would have been more dispersion genetically because of, but there would still been less. And so we see that that's even before the Exodus. So those things are all happening as God is populating his earth, and then there becomes a time where God says no more. And that becomes through Leviticus and the Levites in the time of Moses and Aaron. And that is enough. Like God says, done. That is no longer a way that you can move forward. I tend to look at the science side of it and say, yeah, when we look at the reason why you can't do that, because polydactylism and all these things are now, we see in close-knit communities like the Amish, who have a lot of kind of mixing, I don't want to say inbreeding, but like there's just a lot of close genetic connection between people groups, as that's a kind of a tight-knit community. We see the danger of that in the real world, and that would have been probably the similar in the ancient world. So God says, no more, the earth is populated, move forward, and with people who are not related to you. So I don't necessarily find a problem with it, because I think in every model of history, whether you agree with Christian history, whether you agree with evolution, there has to be, in any of those models, there has to be incestual inbreeding to populate the globe from a very small group of people. So like, whether we like it or not, that's just the way all the models work. We see the same thing in the model of the Bible from Adam and Eve in the garden. And I think we know that God's plan is bigger than that. And we also know the risk and danger of the health situations now, which I don't think would have been as prevalent when God gives people very near perfect DNA in the garden. So I think that problem is exacerbated now by countless generations between now and then. But any other thoughts?
Not really. I mean, there's so many things that you can look at in Scripture and say, well, I don't agree with how that played out then. Well, that's fine, but you're also looking at it through a 2026 lens, right, back through history as well. There are cultural differences. There are, genetic differences. Like, there are so many things that as you're looking all the way back, even with just the DNA, or the fact that there were environmental factors that didn't play a role at the time, right, either. So there's all sorts of different pieces and connections to this that all play together, that while we can look at it now and say, well, that's completely messed up, what were the other options?
Yeah. I mean, the other options are aliens, but like that is the theory that's out there. They're aliens and they came in from another planet. Yeah, maybe, but probably not. So realistically, I think the description of what a lot of scholars believe is the description. I think you just have to understand that's how it works, and we move forward, knowing that God has a bigger plan for us, and that's why He gave us His Word to tell us how to live in this world, post creation, post flood, and post the Old Testament. So. yeah, we hope this is helpful. We'll catch you on the next episode of Hoddle's Got Questions.